operation which involved a relatively small number of forces, and it was something that came up and had to be dealt with quickly. I think we're going to see a bit more of this kind of thing, an attempt to bring down the regime. They would like to do that without waging wholesale warfare on the Iraqi armed forces. But one wild card factor in this, we've seen these missile attacks in Kuwait. It is possible that the Iraqis may be looking to provoke a situation, and if that continues, then I think we could see the wholesale invasion of Iraq involving hundreds of thousands of Allied troops getting underway sooner rather than later.
Combat commander for this area is Rear Admiral Barry Costello. He is aboard the USS Constellation. He tells us that 6 U.S. Navy warships were involved in the Tomahawk strikes into Iraq. They were the USS Cowpens and Bunker Hill. Those are cruisers. There were 2 destroyers, the Milius and the Donald Cook, and 2 submarines, the Montpelier and the Cheyenne. Admiral Costello also tells us that there were 24 strike sorties into Iraq. Those sorties coming off the USS Constellation. They targeted military facilities, air defense facilities, as well as communications facilities. But Rear Admiral Costello was careful to separate these from the so-called shock and awe campaign that is still expected to come, that will include many Tomahawks and many warplanes that are expected to go into Iraq.
I think you could be correct in saying that we're in a transition period, in the sense that a lot of the strikes that happened last night continued efforts that have been going on before, as we talked about. And then, of course, the Tomahawk strikes and whatever other things occurred last night would be in a different phase.
Also coming off of the USS Constellation, the EA-6B Prowler aircraft. These are the radar jamming aircraft from the Lancer Squadron aboard USS Constellation. They flew in support of the F-117 stealth aircraft that dropped bunker-busting bombs in Iraq. The EA-6B providing radar jamming services as the F-117 went into and came out of Iraq. Finally, we heard that some 2.5 million leaflets were dropped into Iraq. Those leaflets telling Iraqi forces that they should not use weapons of mass destruction, that if in fact they used weapons of mass destruction, there would be serious retribution and there would be repercussions for any unit commanders who authorized them. I'm Frank Buckley, CNN, aboard the USS Constellation in the Persian Gulf.
In fact, just as you tossed to me, it looks like it was an F-18 that just landed on the USS Abraham Lincoln. A number of aircraft have been landing after taking off on missions in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Right now, at this time, I can tell you that 7 aircraft are on their way back. 7 aircraft did drop bombs over Iraq. Where exactly they dropped bombs, I can't tell you, but I can confirm that so far, all the strike fighters on their way back after performing missions have all dropped their ordnance. I can tell you what they're doing exactly right now is conducting DCA, which is defensive counter-air. They're looking for air-to-air targets, in other words, Iraqi aircraft in the air that may be coming at coalition aircraft. Also, these missions include photo reconnaissance. They're looking for SAM, surface-to-air missiles, AAA, any kind of threat to coalition aircraft. And as I've been reporting, they're coming back without the bombs, which means that they have found targets which they believe to be a threat and therefore have dropped the bombs. I can tell you right now, that's another F-18 that just came back from a mission in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, landing here on the USS Abraham Lincoln. The tempo has been picking up since this morning, since the President of the United States came out and said that indeed the U.S. is at war with Iraq. It started out slowly. The missions you just saw a couple at a time. Now it's increasing. The tempo is picking up. But there is one thing I can tell you, Paula, is this is definitely just the beginning. As I've been spending time with the F-14 Tomcatters, getting to know other squadrons here on the USS Abraham Lincoln, the tempo will continue to pick up, and at any time we could see massive airstrikes, a lot more intense than what you are seeing right now. Of course, the element of surprise, a crucial asset in any type of a wartime operation, and that is is what they're banking on right now. So what's happening right now is pretty slow and a pretty normal procedure for this type of operation. So we have a lot in store and no doubt a lot to tell you as the minutes tick on. Paula?
6 bunker calls. What that means is that a PA system here over the camp basically says bunker, 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 and sometimes gas, gas, gas. Well, Jim, just a couple of minutes ago, that's exactly what happened. Behind me, you can see here is the bunker. There's about 50 Marines stationed back here. They have their flak jackets on. They have their helmets on. This particular bunker call, they were not told that they did not need their masks, at least not yet. We also heard the alarm saying missiles inbound, missiles inbound. I'm standing out here talking to you. They asked me to put on this helmet and this flak jacket, no question. As soon as we're done talking, Mark Biella, who's the photographer standing right over there, and myself are going to run back into that bunker as well. But this is what we've been experiencing all day, Jim. 6th bunker call now, and who knows how many more to come. Jim?
Speak on whether to authorize the overflights by the U.S. and by the U.K. The U.K. today asked the Turkish government for overflight rights as well. If the motion that is currently being debated is passed, the wording would allow for overflight rights to any foreign government that the government deems. So that, in theory, would allow the UK to enjoy these rights as well. Now, you mentioned Operation Northern Watch. You are right. For the last 2 days, no fighter jets have been taking off from here. We did speak to a spokesman at the airbase today. He told me that they are planning and scheduling future flights, but he did say that that is being done in coordination with the Turkish government. He would not elaborate on that, but the read that people here are giving that is that with the start of hostilities in Iraq, the Turkish government is not very comfortable with the idea of fighter jets, even if they participate in Operation Northern Watch, should be taking off from here. So that's the way it stands now, Jim. Parliament still not deciding, but it is in the process of voting on this overflights issue.
Troops in Kuwait, and the reaction of these U.S. troops after an initial element of fear when they heard the alarms go off that missiles were headed their way. The initial reaction of these troops has been one of deep anger and fury. What Saddam did was that he put steel into the backbone of these soldiers, and they, as I say, they are more than a little angry. It was early afternoon here in the Kuwaiti desert with the 7th Cavalry. Most of us were standing at ease at the time, and suddenly we heard, 3, 4, perhaps 5 explosions in the distance. These explosions sounded like artillery. Within a few moments after that, a captain of our unit, the 7th Cavalry, came out and began yelling, "Get in your vehicles, get in your vehicles." That means take cover quickly. Most of the vehicles here are very heavily armored tanks and Bradley fighting vehicles. So he wanted his soldiers inside the vehicles. Moments afterwards, they started yelling, "Mop 4, Mop 4." That is the designation when you are under a chemical attack. This was, of course, a precautionary move, but every soldier with the U.S. 7th Cavalry, at least Apache troop, and the CNN crew here was told to get into full chemical suits. Boots, trousers, parka, gas mask, and gloves. We did. We sat in our vehicles for perhaps 20 minutes to half an hour until we got an all clear. For me, it was just a relief getting out of that heavy chemical weapons suit on a hot desert day. For the American soldiers here, however, as I say, it put more metal into their spines. They were angered, very much angered, by the fact that the Iraqis fired 6 tactical ballistic missiles their way today. None of them, incidentally, touched the 7th Cavalry unit with which I'm attached.
Voting on allowing the U.S. to overfly Turkey, and the vote is yes. 332 votes for allowing overflight rights to the United States, 202 against, 1 abstention. So this obviously good news for the United States, for the coalition. The motion had called for allowing overflight rights to any 2 foreign nations. It was worded that way, so that leads some to believe that it would also include overflight rights for the United Kingdom. The motion also allows Turkish troops to be deployed in a foreign country, obviously meaning northern Iraq, and this is again what has been expected throughout the day here, and again it seems like it's pretty good news for military planners in the United States. Jim?
Near the demilitarized zone, clearly an awful lot of activity where he is. Bring us up to date if you can with what's happening where you are tonight.
I don't know if you can hear on this microphone, but there are planes currently going overhead. We are in the region of the Iraqi border, and we've heard over the last few hours a major intensification of the number of flights going overhead, the British and the American coalition forces going in to bomb southern Iraq. We've also heard the thud of missiles within southern Iraq from the Americans and the British. We know they must be going into Iraq because we haven't had the shout gas, gas, gas as we did earlier in the day when there were Scud missiles and Al-Samud missiles incoming into the Kuwaiti desert here. There's some confusion over exactly how many missiles have landed. I know we personally in this camp have been into our Scud bunker at least 7 times today for varying lengths of time before the all clear is given, because clearly the fear is that it's possible that the Iraqi troops could be using chemical or biological agents on those missiles.
Yes, and Donald Rumsfeld has been speaking at the Pentagon in the last half hour or so. He's been talking about American troops being poised for action, ready to go. I appreciate that there is only so much you can tell us. There is only so much that they will tell you as journalists. But what sense are you getting tonight of where this is headed, of possible timescales here?
We are being told that the British troops are absolutely poised, ready to go. They are in their forward positions. We've also been hearing from 7 Para, from the Royal Horse Artillery, that they came under fire from the Iraqi side. They have returned fire. So that is the artillery regiment there. So clearly, I think things are coming very, very close to some kind of a beginning here. Especially with the intensification of the bombing campaign, we know clearly that the land invasion will be next. What we don't know is the exact timing. Clearly the army aren't going to tell us because we don't want to tell Saddam Hussein.
Forces attacking positions in southern Iraq. It was 5:30 in the morning in Baghdad when the war on Saddam began, and it's clear tonight the first target was the Iraqi president himself, the aim to decapitate the Iraqi leadership. In a moment, the astonishing background to that attack, but first, this is how the opening shots were fired.
War on Iraq came with the dawn, just an hour and a half after the deadline for Saddam to leave his country. The air raid sirens sounded over Baghdad. There could be no doubt now about what lay ahead. Minutes later, the first cruise missiles began hitting their targets. Others followed, impervious to the crackle of Iraqi anti-aircraft fire, which could be seen exploding over the city. America's Nighthawk stealth fighter bombers had launched the missiles, along with US Navy ships in the Gulf. 40 of them were fired, 40 missiles aimed at Baghdad. Their target apparently Saddam Hussein himself and those around him. In fact, this wasn't, said senior US military chiefs, the start of the real campaign of shock and awe. That will start soon. Instead, this was an attempt to take out Saddam before the war had really started. Come on! British ground troops not far from where I am didn't take part, but had worries of their own. Twice they thought they were under chemical attack and had to scramble for their gas masks. They were false alarms, but the 2 Scud missiles fired on Kuwait were very real. This evening, we're hearing artillery. There are reports that British heavy guns have been firing back into Iraq.
These pictures coming to you through a night vision lens. It's impossible to say exactly what that building is, but it is one victim of this onslaught that is going on. Missiles and bombs raining down on Baghdad. Our correspondent Neil Connery is there. Neil, just bring us up to date with the latest.
Mark, I'm looking at this building, I think the one that you're talking about that is on fire. I can see flames coming from all floors. It's about a 1.5 miles, 2 miles north of where I am here in Baghdad. I would place it in what I would call the main target field in this city, the central administrative area, if you like, where a lot of the key important posts for the leadership are. The flames I can see coming out from the windows, smoke rising up high into the night sky here in Baghdad. Also to the west of this city, from the balcony, the hotel balcony that I'm standing on, I can see smoke still coming from another explosion. Things got underway here again about 20 minutes ago. As you say, we had this burst of anti-aircraft gunfire rising high into the Baghdad night sky, and then we heard the bombs and the missiles drop. And it's clear that things have definitely been stepped up here this evening.
Neil, we can just confirm, in fact, from here in the Kuwaiti desert, that UK ground forces are now involved in a land operation. We also have information that US Marines have entered Iraqi territory tonight. That report unconfirmed, but we do have confirmation that British forces are involved in ground fighting. So clearly some sort of simultaneous air and ground operation underway.
Absolutely, John. We were here when the first ground unit of the American forces fired the first shots in this conflict. We're with the 2nd Battalion of the 4th Field Artillery. They're armed with rocket launchers, and as dusk fell this evening, they launched 15 missiles at targets in Iraq. The missiles they launched have never been used in combat before. They're called M48 unitary missiles. They carry a 500-pound payload of high explosives. They can travel up to 300 kilometers, I understand, traveling at extremely fast speeds. The claim that is made for these missiles is that they have a low level of collateral damage. A low level of collateral damage spread is what I've been told. Much less so than the cruise missiles. They also are more deadly than the cruise missiles in that they travel much more quickly and are therefore practically impossible, we're told, to shoot down.
Carl, can you tell whether you are actually inside Iraq yet?
No, we're not inside Iraq yet. We're definitely not. From the position where we are, we're having to observe very strict light discipline, and we've all been ordered into our chemical and biological suits because we are within striking range of Iraqi mortars or Iraqi artillery. When it was still daylight here, we could see the sand fortification, or berm, as it's known, which is on the Kuwaiti side of the border. There's another such berm on the Iraqi side of the border, and we can see the
gas masks and chemical protection suits across the front. By sea, cruise missiles were used in the Baghdad raids shortly after dawn, and also at sea, Marines aboard HMS Ark Royal, who it's believed could spearhead the campaign, were going through their final drills. American troops were able to examine at least one of the Scuds which fell into Kuwait. But these weapons are designed to spread terror rather than destruction, and so it proved today. Widespread chemical drills among troops, people fleeing for the shelters in Kuwait City itself, but no casualties. Our camp was affected by repeated chemical and biological alerts, all again proving negative.
This is the third time that we've been sent down to the bomb shelters this morning for an alert for a chemical or biological weapons attack. The disruption is obvious, and we're just the media here. We're not soldiers. Small wonder, therefore, that General Brims, the officer commanding British forces here in northern Kuwait, has said that chemical and biological weapons would be better described as weapons of mass effect rather than weapons of mass destruction.
But this was a real alert. The days of exercising and practice are well and truly over.
There have been a series of explosions approximately, well, half an hour's drive north of the Mutler Ridge, which is just north of Kuwait City. Because of that explosion, the division would have gone onto alert, and before we knew exactly what type of attack it was, if indeed it is an attack, we all donned our respirators and our individual protective equipment and got into our shelters.
Late this afternoon, I was among a small group of correspondents taken north to British headquarters to be briefed at the headquarters there on the battle plan.
Instance that US Special Forces are now holding lengthy conversations with Iraqi army commanders, even in Saddam's elite Republican Guard, about them surrendering.
We are in communication with still more people who are officials of the military at various levels. The regular army, the Republican Guard, the Special Republican Guard, who are increasingly aware that it's going to happen. He's going to be gone.
With reports of cruise missiles once again targeting the city, there was also the sound of anti-aircraft gunfire. One building could be seen burning furiously. Ambulances were filmed rushing to the scene as the fire took hold. There have been no reports so far of casualties. At dusk, early signs of the fresh assault beginning. Subsequently, a British military source described the main offensive as kicking off. Royal Marines are now reported to be storming into southern Iraq. Tonight, American F-18s took off from a US warship bound for Iraq. Earlier, as US planes returned to their carrier, one pilot confirmed Pentagon reports that several Iraqi oil fields were seen burning. Latest pictures from the Kuwaiti border show heavy artillery fire into Iraq. Whether or not this is the full military offensive, there's no doubt that there's a major step up in the scale of the assault.
These pictures in the last hour from one position overlooking Baghdad show the scale of the attack. A veteran reporter Peter Arnott was watching from his hotel room in the Iraqi city as the missiles struck their targets.
1 hour and 14 minutes after President Bush's deadline expired, and Baghdad awoke to the sound of air raid sirens. It was soon followed by barrages of artillery and anti-aircraft guns. The sound echoed around the city. Explosions could be heard coming from the suburbs of Baghdad. In the distance, you could see a plume of smoke, the site of one of the targets.
And past, and we're moving towards possible operations, so morale is good. It's been a disappointment or a letdown to be worrying about this all this time, but we appear to have a way forward now.
The Iraqis struck back. Sirens sounded in Kuwait, under threat for the first time since its liberation 12 years ago. 3 missiles were fired. One was intercepted and destroyed by an American Patriot missile. The Allies had to expect a gas attack.
Come on! I think any soldier that told you his heart didn't beat a little bit faster when the words gas, gas, gas were shouted would be a liar. It certainly made my heart beat faster. This is the first time I've ever had to do it for real.
American troops, like these of the 101st Airborne from Kentucky, were ordered to be fully battle-ready by this evening. Their high commanders warned that war is dangerous and there will be casualties. They don't expect a pushover.
It would be just like if I was going in your hometown and trying to kick you out. You're going to fight for everything you're worth. That's your home. It's your town. So, yeah, I imagine we'll get in a good fight.
What will follow will not be a repeat of any other conflict. It will be of a force and scope and scale that has been beyond what has been seen before.
British and American aircraft tried and failed to locate Iraqi missile systems in the desert. The war tonight is entering a new and dangerous phase. Martin Bell, 5 News.
This looks as if it's the night when the war will hit Baghdad hard. Cruise missiles slammed into important government buildings in the center of the Iraqi capital. Smoke and flames are rising from the direction of the Ministries of Foreign Affairs and Planning. But the Americans say this is still not yet the massive attack, shock and awe that they promised. There's more, much more to come. In the desert, US artillery has laid down a heavy bombardment. Behind it, the armored spearhead of the American strike force has crossed the border and is moving forward. The Kuwait news agency is reporting that British forces have captured an Iraqi border town. At sea, electronic warfare aircraft have taken off from the carrier USS Constellation. Missiles launched from ships in the Gulf started the attacks on Iraq this morning. President Saddam Hussein was the target. He appeared shortly afterwards as defiant as ever. This evening, Iraqi TV is still on the air, reporting that he's with his ministers, coordinating the fight against what it called treachery.